Hi, welcome to the second video in the series. In this video, we will cover the following: a brief introduction of the Indian Constitution, points mentioned in the Indian Constitution which are worth noting, and lastly, a brief on the three branches of the Indian government. So, let's start. The Constitution of India is the utmost entity in the Indian government. It is the most supreme law, and all government entities have to abide by it. Wikipedia actually says it best. The Constitution lays down the framework for defining the fundamental political principles, and it establishes the structures, procedures, powers, and duties of the government institution. It also sets out the fundamental rights and directive principles as well as duties of the Indian citizens. Essentially, the Constitution is the guiding force behind everything that the Indian government is supposed to do or is doing. The Constitution came into effect on the 26th of January in 1950. There are many different facets of the Constitution, but going through all of them is beyond the scope of this endeavor. For the sake of this series, let's just try to keep the following 3 points in mind. First, the structure and the system that we are going to understand in this series is based on the framework set out by the Constitution. The size of the Rajya Sabha, Lok Sabha, Vidhan Sabha, the way the members are elected, the number of constituencies that the country is divided into, and so on and so forth. All of these rules and many more are all laid out in the Constitution. Remember, after all, ours is the biggest constitution in the world in terms of size. The second point worth noting regarding the contents of the Constitution are the lists, which signify how the power between the union government and the different state governments is distributed. These lists contain matters upon which the government needs to create laws, implement them, and see to it that they are upheld. The Constitution lays out 3 lists. The first is the Union list, which consists of 96 items. These are issues affecting the country as a whole. For example, defense, armed forces, atomic energy, foreign affairs, the Supreme Court and the High Court matters, income taxes, etc. These issues need to be regulated at a country level rather than a state level. The second is the state list, which consists of 61 items. These are issues which are more localized to a state: law and order, police forces, local transport, village administration, etc. And lastly, the concurrent list, which consists of 52 items. As the name suggests, these are matters which are in scope both at the union as well as the state level. Trade union, stamp duties, marriage, divorces, so on and so forth. Lastly, we need to remember that the Constitution virtually separates the government into 3 distinct branches: the executive branch, which is made up of the President, the Vice President, the Prime Minister, and the Union Cabinet; the legislative branch, which is the Parliament, which consists of the President, the Lok Sabha, and the Rajya Sabha; and lastly, the judiciary branch, which consists of the Supreme Court and the Chief Justice along with the 25 other associate justices. Apart from these 3 branches, the Constitution has also laid out the provision for the Indian civil services. We will touch upon these more when we talk about the duties of the Rajya Sabha. So let's understand very briefly what these 3 branches do. Let's start with the legislative branch. As the name suggests, the main purpose of this branch is to legislate on the issues mentioned in the 3 lists in the Constitution. What this means is that this branch is in charge of creating new laws as necessary as well as amending existing laws. Now, the executive branch of the government is in charge of implementing or executing these laws that are created by the legislative branch. And lastly, the judiciary branch scrutinizes these laws made by the legislative branch before they are implemented, and it also metes out justice when these laws are violated. To put it very crudely, the legislative branch makes laws that the executive branch implements, and the judiciary branch exists to settle disputes when these laws are violated. In the next video, we will examine the legislative branch and answer the following questions about it. What are the different components or entities of the legislative branch? How are they elected? What are their various duties and responsibilities? And how do they work with each other?